Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm James, I'm the CTO of Cynozure, and hopefully you're here to hear about where AI delivers real business value. Very quick bit of who we are, who I work for, and I promise I'll race through this as fast as possible. I work for a company called Cynozure. We're a data and analytics strategy company. We work with customers on the end-to-end journey of doing data. So everything from data strategy through to technical design and implementation, data management, use case delivery. And we do that for a whole load of different brands in different sectors. As our CTO, I often play the role of translator with my clients, trying to help them understand and grapple with some of the big concepts in the industry, help them get on the right path when it comes to making decisions. And I know I've done that with companies that are tiny and have no money through to organizations with 20,000 strong data teams that are still struggling just as much to get things done. So today, we're here to talk about AI, and I've tried to summarize it in this challenge. We did a really fun bit of training a few months ago with the team that was like, can we condense some of our long, really wordy comms down into a nice, simple haiku? And I think this is the essence of this talk. And I'm hearing this pain from a lot of my customers right now, which is they've got their CEO or their executive or their board or whatever going, we need to do AI. And you're like, what do you mean? And how do you respond to that and have that conversation with your executive leadership? Important bit being there, they often don't know why they want to do it, they just think they should be doing it. So in this talk, what I'm hopefully going to arm you with is some ways to frame that conversation with that group and actually make it productive, focused on actually delivering some value for the organization rather than just doing something for something's sake because the CEO wants to tell their other friends that they're doing AI. For the purpose of this talk, I am using AI in the broadest possible sense to mean machine learning and data science and statistics and so on. I'm sure someone can do a whole other talk on why those are all completely different things, but I'm just going to use it in the broadest possible sense for the purposes of this talk. So I think this conversation has been triggered because of the explosion of ChatGPT and more broadly generative AI. And looking at all the sessions here, you are probably all incredibly bored even by half time on day one of hearing about Gen AI, and I promise I'm going to talk about it as little as possible. But it is the spark that has driven this conversation and demand. And quite rightly, the capability offered by not just ChatGPT, but all of the space that is exploding around that is really, really impressive. And it is a game changer. And I've got a great model at the end of this that I use to frame that conversation about how much of a game changer is it that we'll come back to. But what that kind of exciting demand has driven is a bunch of FOMO, fear of missing out. Everyone is looking around, thinks everyone else is doing it and they should be doing it, and where do we start? How do we use ChatGPT? And we're getting some good uses of it. We're getting some pretty disastrous uses of it as well. But everyone's desperate to do something with it. So yeah, we're going to talk about how we can engage our management teams and our executives in a more productive way and try and have a better conversation about what it is that we're going to do and how we're going to get value from it. So I like to simplify things, mostly because I'm not a data scientist, I'm not a machine learning engineer, I've got great people in the team that do that bit of it, so I have to make it simple so I can understand it. And for the purposes of this, I'm going to bucket AI into two simple categories. What I'm going to call traditional AI, so what we've all been doing for years and years and years in this space. Classic machine learning workloads, and we'll talk a little bit about what those are. And then we've got the new world of creative AI, generative AI, that has opened up suddenly a whole world of new possibilities when it comes to using these kind of tools. That picture on the right is what Dawley thinks generative AI looks like on there. So let's start with traditional, bog standard, boring AI and machine learning. This has been around for ages. There are tons and tons and tons of examples of companies using this and have been doing so for years and years and years. So this demand for AI is clearly not really born out of these things. This isn't what we're really being asked for when our CEO or executive comes and says, I want to do AI. But in order for us to have a productive conversation with them, we need to be able to frame this stuff a little bit better and talk to them about, well, what is it we actually want to achieve? So there's a bunch of things that traditional machine learning is really good at. And I was trying to find the words for this when I was preparing for this. I almost wanted to describe it as like the statistics-based side of it, but all AI is maths and statistics. But the really kind of almost mathematical outcomes, the classifications, the predictions, the probability scores that come out of that we then go and do something with. And there's loads of great use cases here. We've got anomaly detection. I'm sure we've all had the phone calls from the bank that say, hey, we've blocked your card because we've spotted suspicious activity. Perfect use of machine learning and AI. We've got classification, looking at feedback from customers, figuring out, is it good, is it bad, where does it fit, what are they talking about, so we can actually parse that more at scale. Great. We've got optimization. Perfect problem for AI or traditional AI to solve. I used to work at Marks & Spencer, built out the big data team and the platform there. One of the use cases we worked on in that space was all about optimizing the allocation of stock of sizes of clothes to stores, because not every store, not every region needs the same number of smalls, mediums, larges. So how can we optimize which shops get how many of which sizes so we can maximize sales? So we're probably to blame when you go in and you can't find whatever size it is that you want. Forecasting, another thing that traditional AI is really good at, predicting forward based on historic trends. Maybe we're doing demand forecasting to understand better how we need to allocate some of our resources, to plan, and so on. And last one there, recommendations. This is definitely, a really classic one that we've all experienced. Product recommendations when you're browsing Amazon, for example, where you just bought a £2,000 TV and they keep advertising you other £2,000 TVs that you might like. Obviously, with that example and many others, these things are not perfect. There are ways to deploy them, and we're going to have a look in a second at some examples where people have done some of these things well and people have done some of these things less well. But we've got this camp of traditional AI, and probably a lot of you are looking at this and thinking you can think of at least one example of where you're doing this today in your organization, and some of you have probably got many, many more at varying stages of maturity. But this is boring. This is not the interesting stuff. This is not the stuff that is now sort of pushing the demand. What we've instead got is the new creative world of AI, so our generative AI-based camp. And for me, the simplest way I can think of that is it's about creativity. And it is genuinely opening up a new world of possibility with what we can do with these tools that just hasn't been there at scale before. Now again, a lot of this isn't new. I don't know if anyone ever saw the earlier iterations of GPT. I remember seeing, I think it was GPT-3, when what looked really impressive was it could just about write some HTML code for you based on simple prompts. And earlier iterations, even less sophisticated than that. But what we've really had recently is the explosion in its level of potential and what it can achieve and how sophisticated it can get. And I think it's important to contextualize that we are still really, really early on in that journey. We are only just starting to really get into the potential of this stuff. I mean, I would ask everyone to put their hands up and say who's used ChatGPT, but I'm assuming everyone in here, if you're at this conference, has at least opened it up once. Some of you might have gone further with it and tested it. I know it has given at least one of my team an existential crisis that their job is not going to be here in 10 years' time. And it is really impressive when you get into, it can write code and applications. We're a consultancy, we hire data engineers and technical team members, and we're having the conversation of why would we hire a mediocre average developer because the smart person put in front of ChatGPT is going to get the coding done faster. It can write marketing copy, it can create strategies, it can design artwork and music and all of these kinds of creative domains that have previously been largely untouched by the sort of machine learning revolution. So wow, we can suddenly do a whole load more with this, but there are some downsides to it. We've all seen and heard some of the problems that come with lying and hallucination and so on that mean this isn't yet perfect, it isn't yet suitable for all scenarios, and there are definitely really bad examples of it out there in terms of its use that are acting as cautionary tales already. So we're still grappling with where are we with this? Is it really the right tool? Am I really ready to deploy it? For me, one of the most interesting pieces of what we're seeing with generative AI is how accessible it is. If you think, for how long was machine learning the domain of big tech, large enterprise? It was expensive for both the technology, the platforms, buying the GPUs, resources, the developers, machine learning engineers were high six-figure salaries. Not everyone could do it. And slowly and gradually it became much more accessible and more open source and cheaper, and compute got faster and more people could do it. We've jumped straight in some ways with generative AI to say, all of us can go on ChatGPT's website, Dawley's website, Midjourney, you name it, for free and have a go. Big tech are out open sourcing their models so we can build this stuff in-house. There's reasonably priced enterprise solutions available. So this is just very quickly become very available to everyone. So I was going to talk through a few examples of good and bad in this space. So selfishly, I'm going to pick one of my customers, Veracity Trust Network. This for me is a really good example of finding a problem that's suited to AI. So these guys in the cybersecurity space, and they help organizations detect whether traffic on their website is bots or humans. Massive cybercrime problem, hugely expensive to deal with. They were even telling me the other day that insurers are starting to look at not offering cyber insurance and hacking cover because it's just hitting a certainty of 100% that it's going to happen, that it's just not viable. So protecting yourselves is going to be really important. So historically, they'd always had like a rules-based engine looking at various data points in there in order to determine whether or not traffic on a website was a bot. And these things are pretty sophisticated. They can sign up for a bank account, including doing all of the identification validation. That's a serious problem that banks are grappling with. So they wanted to explore, could we use machine learning to start taking into account different data points? Yeah, we can. We can look at mouse movement on a page and look at the speed and direction it takes. We can even turn that into an image and use image recognition on the shape that it creates. And it's kind of a constant battle of outsmarting the bots. And that is a problem that I can't simply solve by writing some SQL or buying a product. I have to build something for that, and I need something that's capable of learning and evolving with the problem statement. Anyone going to Data IQ Awards? We're up for a prize with these guys in the best ML project space, so fingers crossed for that. So great, really good example of a good problem. Zillow. Not a UK-based business, I don't think, but they do housing market, pricing, a bit like Zoopla and so on. They had a business initiative back, I think it was 2018, where they were using machine learning to predict the house prices in the market. And they went and bought 27,000 houses that they thought they could renovate and flip quickly based on the prediction of where that housing price was going to go, and therefore the profit they could make. Didn't work. This is my bad example. They ended up, I think they've still got 10,000 of those homes they haven't sold. They've written off millions. They had to cut 25% of the workforce, about 2,000 employees, because while predicting house prices wasn't necessarily a bad idea, they hadn't really accounted for how they were going to implement that. Volatility of COVID pandemic, of a labor shortage in the US for house renovation meant that this did not work out like they thought. Their predictions were off, and they had gone all in on it, so they've had to can that program. Now, there was probably nothing wrong with the maths they were doing, the process underneath, but they've deployed it in a very high-risk stake in an industry or in a market that they perhaps didn't understand as well as they thought, or at least hadn't fully appreciated the risks of. So, a cautionary tale here, they have wound down that program now and said, we think we could probably get more accurate, but it's not safe or affordable to do so. I was going to then do an example of like good generative AI, and I spent some time researching and talking to people and seeing if I could find one, and there is some good stuff out there. I've got a couple of customers in the investment space that are using it to make all their research more accessible. So, they'll gather hundreds of sources, Bloomberg and whatever, together to provide research for their investment teams, making that accessible, searchable, consumable. There's some great examples of that out there. But I actually think we're just too early at this point to say whether or not there's good use cases. I don't think we've necessarily felt the sting that is potentially going to come with some of those things in the long run. So I am hedging my bets on this one and saying, I yet don't know of a really good, really successful use case that has stood the test of time to prove it's good. There are lots of bad ones, though, already. You're probably familiar with the lawyer in the US who was using this to research his case, and he submitted his amicus brief and had, I think, 6 made-up cases. He's now in quite a lot of trouble with the judge because of that, and he just relied on ChatGPT without understanding what it is, how it worked, fell victim to the lying, the hallucinations that can come with these kind of applications. And that's fundamentally born out of a misunderstanding of the technology he was using and what it was for. There's sadder examples of this as well. I don't know if anyone saw, there was a eating disorder charity that said, we're going to get rid of most of our call center and we're going to replace it with a GPT-based AI called Tessa, and it's going to enable us to reach a lot more people, it's going to cut our costs down. Not what it was trained to do, but it started giving dieting advice to the people contacting the helpline, which was extremely harmful to the audience that they are trying to help, as you might imagine. So they've had to wind that down. They'd already taken their call center out. Not good. So I'm talking about these because it's important that we're able to frame to our leadership teams that this isn't all just rosy, that there is some really good examples, but you have to pick carefully. You have to enter with your eyes open. And if you do it well, you can be really successful, but let's make sure we're having a serious conversation about what we're going to do and where we're going to apply it. That leads us really then on to talking about value. So at the very top level, the fact that we're doing something with AI is no different than any other use case we might deliver with data. The value comes from the business problem we're solving and the impact that we're having on the organization. Are we attracting more customers because we're talking to them better? Are we optimizing our supply chain by reducing the routes that our trucks need to take? Are we optimizing our stock in stores so we can sell more and have less waste? Those things have a tangible business value to them. Ideally, we can quantify it. The fact that we've done that with AI or someone sitting with a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet is kind of irrelevant when it comes to the value of a use case. So at that top level, we need to make some sensible decisions about, well, what value would doing this with AI add to my problem? Let's say I want to do a customer segmentation. I've never done one before. I'd like to send some more targeted campaigns to customers with some different tone of voice and different images and different messaging, because I think that's going to drive conversion. Great use case, hear it all the time from marketing teams, quite well-trodden path. I can achieve that by writing a bit of SQL. I could do a basic RFM, recency, frequency, monetary type model. I could just write that in a bit of SQL. It wouldn't take me very long. It wouldn't cost me very much to do. I could get it out. And I might realize 80 or 90% of the value that I can from doing a customer segmentation model just by doing it like that. I could shift that up the chain. I could maybe go a little bit more into, I'm going to throw some Python in there and use a few more statistical-based models and do a little bit more complex analysis and eke out a little bit more. Or I could go the whole hog and do a full-on clustering model to identify all my customer groups and use all sorts of data points in there. That's going to cost me a lot more. It's going to take a lot longer. It's going to be a lot more difficult. I have to deploy it, and once I've deployed it, I need to worry about model drift and keeping that up to date. I have to pay for more expensive resource and more expensive tools to achieve that. So if all I'm really getting is an extra 10% of the value, I need to have a conversation about whether that offset is really worth it. And in a lot of cases, it's not going to be. But those are the kind of things that people often rush to in the first instance as a way to solve those kind of problems. There are, though, some very good reasons to do AI that are not necessarily directly related to delivering a specific use case in the business. As a strategy, we might say, we're going to implement this because we've got investor demand, and actually, we're seeking investment. Those investors are looking for AI as a feature in companies, so we need to demonstrate we're doing it. It might be about brand value and perception in the market to be seen as cutting edge and so on. It might be about preparing for the future and saying, this might not be the main thing we want to do with it, but actually we need to start learning. We need to be ready for when the real thing is there, that we've built our skills up, we understand how this stuff works, so we can do it well. It might be about attracting talent and saying, if we want to hire the best people in this space, we need to be doing interesting stuff, and right now, there's nothing more interesting than this. So there are reasons outside of pure value-based delivery that we might choose to go about this. And that's something really important to understand when our CEO demands, gimme AI, asking the question, well, why? What is it? What are you trying to change? Are you just trying to make us more money? Because I've probably got 20 other ways we can do that are much cheaper and much quicker and much easier. Or is there some other objective at play? That other objective at play, I think, can be framed really well by this model. This has been the best article I've read in like the last 2 years. If you Google Roger Martin flattening technologies as a Medium article, it's not very long. It has completely changed and shaped the way I am thinking about the current wave of generative AI, and I'll try and explain it to you quickly now, because I think it's a great way to frame with your executive leadership the stakes and where we should focus. By a quick show of hands, who is putting generative AI and what we're seeing on the level of the internet or the personal computer or the internal combustion engine when it comes to the change that it's about to bring about in the industry? So hands up if you think it's that level of significance. Cool. It's about 50%. I can tell you my answer is I think it is that level of change, and this model's helped me come to that conclusion. So basically what Roger talks about here is that flattening technologies, a flattening technology is a technology that is so impactful in its disruption to the market that if you do not adopt it, you are no longer able to be competitive, and you will, over a period of time, effectively cease to exist as an organization. Examples he gives of those technologies are the internal combustion engine, personal compute, and the internet. And I think generative AI is the next one on that list. So they go through 4 stages, basically. You get the emergence of a new leader. So the first person to come along and do the thing, whatever that thing is. Henry Ford with his Model T building their car, for example. They've got a head start. They build their dominance in the stakes. It's interesting here, do we put ChatGPT on here? Who do we place in these things? Maybe we've got slightly more than one leader with generative AI, but we certainly got both I think somewhere between these 2 stages, a building of dominance of a leader and proliferation here. So that proliferation and crowding is when others realize we need to get on board, we need to start building this. So this is our Meta and Google and everyone else who's trying to build these kind of tools out there are racing for the competition. And the end of that cycle, you end up with this establishment of a new plateau where this is a commodity. Everyone has it. No one thinks about like IT as a massive strategic advantage for your organizations, right? No one's looking at electricity in your building and being like, this is really going to make us. It is a necessity. If you don't have it, you're doomed. Think of the internet's a really easy example for this. There is no organization on the planet that can be truly competitive without access to and use of the internet. Even if you're just trying to be a small bakery in rural France, if you can't put your opening times and where you are on Google, you are really going to struggle to in any way grow and sustain your business. So these flattening technologies, they disrupt widely around them as well. So they destroy many related industries, but they also create new industries. Think the internal combustion engine. it wiped out horses and carriages. Suddenly leather work was much less required for it. Grooming of horses and horse feed no longer needed. But metal work, suddenly really important. Oil and gas for petrol, really key. Auto body works and repair shops and mechanics. It created all of these peripheral industries around it. And from there, airlines and ships and submarines and the massive, massive expansion out from it. So it creates as many jobs often as it destroys. So we're going through this cycle of a flattening technology. And for me, the reason I think it is of this significance is that if you've genuinely properly spent some time playing around, even with just ChatGPT, you'll have seen the productivity gains it can give you. It can drive up speed and quality. That's how we often talk about it internally, is like, it just makes everyone better and faster. And you cannot afford for your competition to be better and faster at everything than you. Like, over time, that is going to add up to a significant deficit when they are able to build their applications and IT estate very quickly, when they are able to drive their call center because we've got a working system. What Roger goes on to posit is that there's 3 ways you can respond to a flattening technology, though, and this is the important bit for our conversations with our fictional CEOs. You can build it. Okay, that's probably not anyone in this room, I imagine, and that's a real moonshot to go for. You can become an early leader and dominant player in it, so you can invest very heavily, very early on. So that's the play that Google's and Facebook's and Amazon's and so on are leaning in with. They're trying to become early dominant leaders. Or, the one that's probably applicable for everyone in this room, is you can combine it with unique customer insights. So this is the route that, say, Apple took. They did not invent the smartphone. In fact, most people often complain that Android had it 4 years ago. It's a really common thing. But what Apple and particularly Steve Jobs did was they had very good customer insight. They knew their audience, and they were able to remove all the annoying bits about that flattening technology and deliver a product that was able to make them, a $1 trillion business. So we've got those 3 ways to respond, and it's that customer insight one that is the real way to respond. So that leads me to the end of this, which is to put that bit together. So there are 2 questions that Roger asks that I really like here. Where are we going to play and how are we going to win? It's how he frames strategy in a lot of his articles, which is what he writes about. So when we get that ask in from the CEO that says, I want to do AI, the instinct for a lot of us is probably be like, well, I'll go build you a customer segmentation model and we'll be doing some AI. Maybe you go a bit further and you're going to outsource your call center and put ChatGPT in place or just have a chatbot on your website. I think we need to be spinning that conversation around and saying, well, why do you want to do this? How is this going to ensure that we are protected from the disruption that is coming? How are we going to combine this with our insights? What do we do better than anyone else in our company? And how can we put that together with these emerging technologies to deliver something that will be truly excellent for our customers, that people will love, that will bring us loyalty, fame, money, and riches. And then let's work on that thing rather than just firing off and doing AI for the sake of doing AI, because that's the thing that is going to make the company truly valuable. That's going to be the thing that means we are spending our energy in the best possible place that we can when it comes to delivering AI. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along, everybody. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time this afternoon to be with me. I don't think we've got very long. I don't know if we've got time for 3 minutes, so if you want to chat about anything I've talked about here, come ask a question or anything like that. We're on stand 608, which is sort of like back that way near the front. So feel free to swing by, say hello, ask me a question. I'll be hanging around there for the rest of the afternoon. But enjoy the rest of the conference. I hope you don't have to hear too much more about GenAI anymore.